I know I'm a tad late to the party, but honestly, I was putting off watching Wendy and Peter Pan. Peter Pan and Wendy, because I knew that it was going to stab me right where it hurts, in the childhood. I'm Troy from Marks on Movies, and today I'm going through what I liked, and mostly what I hated, about the dumpster fire that was Disney's remake of my favorite story of all time, Peter Pan. Now, on with the story. This is a spoiler warning to anyone who hasn't seen Peter Pan and Wendy, but wants to, for whatever reason. At the end of the video, I'm going to go over what other people thought of this thing, but first, to my opinions, because I'm the one who matters in this video, darn it. I'm going to hit you with all of the stuff that I hate right off the bat, and then I'm going to go into the stuff that I actually liked after that. Spoiler, one list is much longer than the other. Also, along with my list of things that I don't like, I'm going to do a rundown of the entire film. So, here we go. Starting with the things that I hated, Wendy is incredibly snotty and rude with her mother for no good reason.
Mother, I heard you the first time. I'll be ready.
Her mom's not being mean or forceful. Her father is only really seen once and isn't overbearing or overly mean like in the original. And the mother is a nice lady that Wendy just keeps smarting off to. Wendy shows us right off the bat that she is in no way motherly or loving to her brothers, and she's actually rude to them too. She interrupts their fun little sword fight with her own wooden sword, getting overly competitive and ruins it by causing them to smash a mirror with a sword. Then, she blames them when her father questions him about it.
Father, it wasn't my fault. It was their silly little game.
You're a pirate, aren't you? It's every man for himself.
What the fuck?
Peter Pan just kind of bursts into their bedroom in the middle of the night after Tinkerbell randomly made Wendy float. Then he made a ton of noise searching for his shadow. This new version also cuts out clapping for Tinkerbell and Peter crying over his shadow, which is actually what was supposed to wake Wendy up. Also,
were you expecting someone else?
Yep.
There is zero romantic chemistry whatsoever between Peter, Tinkerbell, and Wendy. And it's not even implied in the film. Peter is way too young for Wendy. He looks like he's about 13 and she's about 16. Wendy randomly gives Peter the thimble, saying that it's a kiss just to cheer him up after accidentally stabbing him with her needle. This was random and pretty meaningless. Peter seems like a damn stalker spying on Wendy for weeks. This was instead of the original story where he randomly stumbles into their room while looking for his shadow. Skipping ahead a bit to when they get to Neverland, Wendy meets the Lost Boys. Well, sort of.
Lost Boys.
Every last one of us.
But you're not all boys.
So?
But I guess it doesn't really matter.
We also see Tiger Lily, who is played by a real Native American. I like that part, but she speaks her native language, which would be fine, but no one else speaks her language. Then she switches to English, proving that she can communicate with others, but chooses not to. Why? Because you, that's why. Look, I realize that Peter Pan was pretty flighty and aloof, but he's a flat-out sociopath in this film. He brings Wendy and her brothers to Neverland, then they get separated by a cannonball attack, and when Peter sees Wendy again, he's like, "Oh, hey, look at you, you're alive. Righto." In the old one, Peter tells Wendy and her brothers to take off to safety so that he can deal with the pirates on his own. What an ass. Skipping ahead a little bit more, the pirates capture Wendy's brothers, chain them to a rock in a cave, and are going to leave them to drown on high tide. Well, Peter shows up with Tiger Lily and the Lost Thems to ruin this plan. Then, the Croc sneaks up on Captain Hook during his sword fight with Peter. Getting back to things that I hate, the Croc is gigantic in this movie, which would be fine, I guess, but this is the one and only time that you actually get to see him in the film. They pretty much make a bloodless version of the movie Lake Placid during the cave scene. Yikes. A quick aside about the crocodile here. This is very much a if you know type scenario. That shouldn't be a thing. If your target audience is children who have never seen this before, you should probably explain things. Hook said earlier that he hates clocks. Never explains why. I don't even remember him explaining anything about the croc eating his hand, a clock, or anything. This is quite literally a if you know, you know thing. In a kid's movie. We go to Peter Pan's hideout in the woods now, when the Lost Thems say, Wendy can be our mother. She replies with,
I don't even know if I want to be a mother.
the whole point of her character is that she realizes that she's mature and maternal in nature, and that she's growing up. Way to miss the point of your own stories, Disney. We find out Captain Hook was the first Lost Boy, more on that later, and yet he has no idea where the Lost Boy's hideout is until he hears Wendy singing. Did he forget or get a brain injury or something? Or does getting older just make you forget? You know what? Maybe it's that last one. We get to hate Peter Pan even more because when talking to Wendy, he associates James Hook growing up with him being evil. So he literally hates Hook because he didn't want to stay a little boy forever and completely forget about his mother. By God, what a monster. I just want to say there are like 0 reasons why the Lost Thems follow Peter other than the same reason why kids follow around the cool kid in school, who no one really knows why he's a cool kid, and he's actually a humongous jerk with no respect for anyone, and he's not that smart. Not to rag on a child, but the young actor that they cast to play Peter Pan is a complete charisma vacuum. He's stone-faced and monotone through most of this. He's supposed to be charismatic and, like I mentioned earlier, the cool kid. But he seems so bland and boring. Like, I imagine that if he couldn't fly, Peter would be the most bland, boring, vanilla kid whose favorite movie is books. Anyway, to fill in the story, the pirates sneak in, capture Wendy and the Lost Thems, and Hook gets into a sword fight with Peter, slashes him, and Peter falls like 3 stories straight to the ground. But don't worry, he's not dead. Because, you know, how could he be? Captain Hook fills us in later on the pirate ship that not only did he leave Neverland to grow up, but Peter, who was his best friend, banished him for daring to miss his mother. And then, when he returned, Peter said he was evil and then mutilated him by chopping off his freaking hand during a sword fight and feeding it to a crocodile. And on top of that, Hook never did find his mother.
Emotional damage!
Why are we supposed to cheer for Peter Pan? This young child has some The Good Son vibes going on for sure. After a while, Wendy is made to walk the plank on the pirate ship. Tinkerbell manages to escape her little prison and fairy dust ex machina Wendy before she can actually step off the plank. Wendy then thinks happy thoughts, and all of her happy thoughts are of her as a single woman, never having a companion, and basically just concentrating on her work and her hobbies. Hardly anyone else is in her visions. There are no kids, no husband, and no family. She's a writer, a traveler, a pilot, and then dies alone, most likely surrounded by her cats. Yeah, that's a fulfilling life for a Victorian-era British woman. Good God. Wendy cranks the girl boss up to 11 when Captain Hook sees her flying and says, "Is this the boy's magic?" And she says,
No, this magic belongs to no boy.
Wendy has to be the strong, independent woman that don't need no man now. How boring. Peter doesn't save her. In fact, she ends up saving Peter. We'll get to that. Tinkerbell helps Wendy save herself, and then Tinkerbell makes the ship fly. Then Peter shows up, riding on Tiger Lily's horse after Tiger Lily saved him with some mystical, magical BS herbs that she rubbed on his chest.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
And why would anyone give a crap about him even being there? Wendy's already saved them all. After that, Wendy actually has to save Peter because he's falling, doesn't have enough pixie dust, and she catches him.
What the f***?
Peter holds Captain Hook at sword point and decides to apologize to him for being a massive jerk, but Captain Hook doesn't accept it. Why would he? Then Wendy has to save Peter again from Hook's sword. Yawn. After that, Hook goes to fall. Peter tells him to think happy thoughts, and Hook says that he doesn't have any before falling into the sea. He has no happy thoughts because of Peter Pan and a lifetime of trauma inflicted upon him. Poor guy.
Emotional damage!
Skipping ahead again, they all fly the magical flying ship back to England. Wendy brings the lost Dems with her and quite literally drops them in her parents' laps. What the hell are they supposed to do with these kids? They should have just stayed in Neverland, because these kids are 100% going off to workhouses or orphanages, and given their ages, they ain't getting adopted and will eventually age out of the system. Sorry, it went kinda dark there, but it's very true. Come to find out, Peter Pan wasn't stalking Wendy, he was stalking the house, because this weirdo scratches his name into everything, and when he lived there before going to Neverland, he scratched his name into the side of a damn chimney. So yeah, we find out that he lived there in that very house, and by the time he came back, his mother was gone. So he gave up and went back to Neverland. Then he says that he thinks he's ready to stay, but the ship breaks the chimney and starts flying off, so Peter completely changes course and decides to fly back to Neverland.
Right.
We get a Sister Girls moment at the end when Tinkerbell finally speaks English, telling Wendy,
"Thank you for hearing me."
because earlier, you see, they said that Peter only pretends to listen to Tinkerbell, but honestly doesn't know what she's saying. But her girl Wendy, she's got her back. This is the complete inverse of the original relationship between the two characters. Tink hated Wendy from the start because she was jealous over Peter giving her so much attention. Tinkerbell sabotages Wendy whenever she can until she finally gets a bit friendly with her. But not in this damn movie. They were sisters from the beginning. Why? Don't know. Finally, I've got to ask, what the hell was Tinkerbell's story here? She's just kind of there to drop fairy dust on everyone and be misunderstood. I guess. She has zero character arc here. She's got no depth and is pretty much a MacGuffin. Wrapping it up a bit in the end here, it turns out Captain Hook and Smee didn't die. They're apparently the only pirates who didn't. How the hell did that work? Anyway, Peter Pan flies the ship back to Neverland to save them from the water, and Hook smiles when seeing Pan come back. To be a bland, lifeless husk of a classic tale would be a mighty great adventure. Now, on to hit you with some of the things that I actually liked about this movie. From the moment they got to Neverland, besides the stupidity with the lost Dems, I enjoyed a big chunk of it. I made my complaints known earlier, but I was still fairly entertained for a few minutes at least. I liked the clubhouse. It's not less private than the ground under a tree, but it looked pretty cool and was a lot more roomy for Peter Pan and the lost Dems. On the pirate ship, when Captain Hook wanted to kill them all, Wendy actually tried to sacrifice herself to save her brothers and the lost Dems, so that was good. We actually got some humility and self-sacrifice from this boring, bland, generic girl boss version of Wendy Darling. I see a lot of people complaining about this, but I honestly didn't think that the CGI on this one was gratuitously bad, like most Disney films nowadays. I suppose that since that bar was on the floor, this one just managed to barely step over it. Finally, I really do like Jude Law, and I don't hate the slight changes to Hook's look. Changing up the look a bit of the character was the least of my complaints. He still looked cool and menacing. Also, Jude Law did what he could with this character. He wasn't as over-the-top bombastic and charismatic as Hook should have been, but no one was, except for maybe Wendy. He can only work with what the writers give him. Also, I think Jim Gaffigan was perfectly cast as Smee. He did a good job and really stood out as a bright point in this film. Looking at Rotten Tomatoes before we go, it looks like most people agree with me here. The tomato meter sits at an unimpressive 62%, while the audience score is an abysmal 13% for over 5,000 ratings. The critical consensus states that Peter Pan and Wendy's obligatory fidelity to the animated classic keeps it from achieving Neverland Nirvana, but David Lowery's pensive direction gives this rendition some of its own magic. I highly disagree with that. However, the top audience review sums it up by saying, quote, "Slower and a lot less visually appealing than Disney's animated version, Peter Pan and Wendy lacks the magic of the classical source material," end quote. That's the understatement of the year, but there you go. Please comment down below with what you thought of Peter Pan and Wendy. Were you hoping for something better than what you got, or were you satisfied with this dreck? I would honestly love to hear from someone, anyone, who actually liked this film, and I'd like an explanation as to why. I'm not joking or being a jerk, I seriously would like to know. Also, please share this video around to everyone you know, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that little bell to be notified every time we post brand new content. I've been Troy from Marks on Movies. I will see you next time.